Greetings, everyone! Well, we have a very special treat for you today. I have a very special guest with me. This is Nichole. You may or may not have heard me mention her a little bit recently. Well, we are blessed with her presence today, and thought it would be fun to talk about Neil Gaiman's American Gods because I've had this book forever. I actually got it from Neil himself when he was at a book reading, and he signed it for me, and it was wonderful. I've never read it. So, anyway, there's a TV series adaptation which just had its first season on Amazon Prime. I have watched that and really enjoyed it a lot. And I'm in the process of actually listening to the 10th anniversary audiobook, which is apparently the definitive edition that Neil himself prefers. Anyway, Nichole here suggested that maybe we could do a video about American Gods. This is fairly current. You know, everybody's talking about the show and reading the book and stuff. And you are quite intimately familiar with the book
Absolutely.
in all its forms.
I am a voracious reader. If it's in
Yeah.
print, I read it. If I'm stuck in a bathroom, I actually know what surfactants are now.
Well, there you go.
And this one, this is a go-to book at least once a year. I
Mhm.
reread it because it's just like all really, really good works of fiction.
Mhm.
It's incredibly multi-layered.
Mhm.
You, by now, you would have noticed the just how they expanded on things with the show versus the audiobook.
Yeah,
And then
already.
when you
Yeah.
actually get to sit down and read it, just the differences between what goes on the screen, on the in your ears with the audiobook, and then what's on the page.
Mhm.
It's not exactly three different works, but
Mhm.
it's different enough and it's thought-provoking enough
Mhm.
to be going forward with.
And something see, that's the kind of story I like, is the kind that every time you revisit it you get something new out of it. Like, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of TV shows for me, like I like Twin Peaks would be an example of that. You
Haven't
know,
seen the new one yet.
yeah, it's
It's on the list.
really good.
Yeah, I'm
But
avoiding everything. No
yeah,
spoilers.
no, it's I had a few things spoiled for me, but luckily they weren't major things, so all the big shocks and surprises have still been intact. So yeah, so today we're going to talk about American Gods in its various forms. As far as the book goes, we're basically going to go as far as where the show has gotten up to, just so those of you who are following the show and maybe haven't read the book yet won't necessarily have anything spoiled for you, but there will be spoilers for the story up to that point, because obviously we're going to want to talk about some specific things. So, American Gods, today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. So, I guess we'll start with me and sort of how I discovered it. Well, not much to tell, really. As I mentioned in the intro there, I was working at Chapters at the time. This was back in the early 2000s. And occasionally Chapters would get authors, like famous authors, to come in. If they were in town, they would book them to do book signings and readings. And I was pretty friendly with the management, and they knew that I was a big fan of Neil Gaiman's Sandman, which was sort of his big notable work at the time, and said, "Yeah, Neil Gaiman's coming to town. He's got this new book come out called American Gods. Did you want to go to the book reading?" I'm like, "Yeah, get to actually meet the guy. Yeah, hell yeah. I just when just I will be there." So I went with one of my other buddies from work, and it was great. And he read a few selections from the book, talked about some other projects that were going on, talked about how the Sandman movie was in production hell. Oh, I should mention, as a little aside here, when Neil was talking about the Sandman movie and why it was in production hell, he's like, well, one of the big reasons is the changes that the studios wanted to make to the story. Like, for example, have you read Sandman?
I have.
Okay. So one of the things that they wanted to do was have some minor differences with the character of the Corinthian. Now, the Corinthian, of course, is a pretty major villain in the early part of the book and in the series, and he's one of Morpheus's creations. He's a nightmare creature that he created, and he escapes into the real world because of Morpheus being trapped for so long, and so he's trying to hunt him down and deal with him, and so in the movie version, the studio thought it would be, a little more interesting if we have the Corinthian as Morpheus's brother.
No. No, that's so Keanu Reeves
And
as
I'm like,
John Constantine.
and I'm like,
No.
how does that even work? And there was just like this groan from the audience,
Oh
and
my
he's
God.
like, yeah, I know. It's like, don't worry, that's not gonna happen.
Oh my God. No. That's, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because he has siblings. They're the D's.
Well, exactly. It's
Death
like that
and
just
desire and
yeah, it's the D family, and it's
Yeah.
like, no, that cannot change. Like, that's the stupidest idea ever. It was like when they were talking about making a Thundercats live action movie, and the Thundercats were going to be in a rock band. It's like, what?
Wait, what? It's like, no.
No, that's not going to work.
No.
So
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Penguins? Like, no.
Anyway,
Ah.
so he read some selections from American Gods. It was really great, and then he had like a meet and greet afterwards where everybody could chat with him for a little bit, and he would sign the book. So I will just show you here. He asked who he should make it out to. I just said to sign his name. He probably thought I was going to put it on eBay, but no effing way. Just going to get a nice little close up here for you. And there we go.
Yes, and that is absolutely not coming home with me in my bag. I told you I found a white book. I'm
So-
not fondling your book anymore. There you go.
So that was essentially my first experience with the book, was just the few excerpts that Neil Gaiman himself read at the book reading. And then I just never got around to reading the book. It was just one of those cases of getting sidetracked with a bajillion other things and just kept overlooking it. But then the TV series came out recently. It was like, okay, well, at least, I'll check out the TV series, then I can get kind of a flavor for it, and then and maybe I'll finally read the book. Because I know he himself was saying that the TV series on the cover is about a third, maybe, of the book.
Not even.
Yeah, so I love that they're adapting it as a TV series just because this is such a massive, complicated story. So they're really giving it time to breathe, which is great. Now, how did you first discover American Gods? What was your kind of...
Just like you, Sandman first. My ex-husband's brother worked at a comic book store in Edmonton, brought me a copy of the Sandman. Interestingly enough, along with that, I got my first editions of The Watchmen and V for Vendetta.
Oh, nice.
So that, it's like, yeah, you might be my ex-husband, but every once in a while I send a little love towards Alan's way, because for real, but Sandman was the first thing. And then I got seriously into the Discworld. I love Terry Pratchett.
Oh, okay,
If you like, for real, I don't know if you've ever read any of them.
I have not. I have a passing familiarity.
But often people do, but once you get there, the Discworld it's one of my favorite places to go if I need a quick vacation, because life is
That's
hard.
your go-to.
I'll go and hang out with His Grace, Sir Vimes, But in the course of that, I discovered that the guy who wrote Sandman, Neil Gaiman, also co-wrote a book with Terry Pratchett called Good Omens. Good Omens, far and away, is the book that I have had stolen from me more than any others, although American Gods is a close runner.
Yeah.
I recommend it. Anybody who has seen The Omen or has a passing interest in the apocalypse, is like,
Definitely.
by now we've had to come up with a plural for apocalypse. Thank you, Buffy and the Winchester Boys. But Good Omens is probably the most fun you can have doing it. And then I was wandering through a bookstore, saw American Gods, and went, okay, I really liked Good Omens. I mean, Good Omens, I was reading it on a bus and I was laughing so hard. The lady behind me changed seats. I had no idea what she thought I was doing, but I guess I worried her a little. And that's good times when you can get somebody to change seats on a bus.
That's always good.
When I first took a crack at American Gods, couldn't get through it.
Yeah.
It was so dense and
Too
there was
dense,
so much going on, and I had a plethora of children running around at my feet.
Yeah.
At that point, I was Archie comics on the back of the toilet. That was as much reading as I could do.
As much depth as you could handle.
Yeah. That was the time that I started getting into like the science fiction analogs, fantasy science fiction magazines, because that was as much time as I had to read.
Short stories.
So American Gods got put on the shelf until, probably 2008, I think, is when I picked it up again.
Almost the 10th anniversary.
Almost the 10th anniversary. And I picked it up and you could almost hear the sucking sound as I got drawn into that universe very, very quickly. I really like Shadow. I really don't like his wife.
No.
I really like
Totally
Mr.
on the same
Wednesday.
page there.
And I weirdly developed a crush on the tall Mad Sweeney. Because the idea of a tall leprechaun
Yes.
being a tall woman, a tall leprechaun, cracked me up because I bet nobody danced with him either.
He's such a fun character, too. I actually... Mad Sweeney, I think, is one of my favorite characters so far. I just love that...
They have done a lot.
Yeah.
As you continue on with this, you may be disappointed at how little Mad Sweeney is in the book.
So
but
in the show more. Yeah.
he made enough of an impact in the book. Mad Sweeney, Laura herself, Salim, not Salim,
Yeah.
and a couple of others, and Bilquis herself.
Yeah.
These are all characters that if you haven't read the book, read the book. You'll love them.
Yeah. And you'll meet them all in the show,
And
too.
and they get really, really... I just like using the word fleshed out to describe something in
I would say
show.
expanded.
Seriously expanded on.
Yeah.
You know, like they're walk-on characters, excellent in the book. But because the book had been so heavily edited, and that's something that in the introduction to the 10th anniversary, he talks about a lot of it was left on the figurative cutting room floor. So he was able to come back and explore them. But yeah, like I said, you know, Mad Sweeney, just very early on in the book, I was like, I really liked Shadow, although he broke my heart. Loki was interesting. And the coin trick things, because, you know, being into clowning and stuff like that. So I was like, okay. I basically, you know, hygiene and food got put on the back burner until I was finished about 2 days later. It's a heavy-duty read. Do not expect to be done it in 2 days.
Yeah.
And I have read it at least once a year since then, along with his other works, you know, Neverwhere, The Graveyard Book. I haven't read The Ocean at the End of the Lane yet. Fragile Things, for anybody who likes short fiction, he... Just like with a graphic novel, he is so very good at getting his point across in a short amount of words. It's like and unlike reading Leonard Cohen.
Yeah.
You know, Leonard Cohen's shorter poetry is definitely like, pow, you got that. A 3-line poem made my life. I was like, hi, he's 70 plus. I would date him. You know, somebody writing something like that was... And Neil Gaiman is much the same way. And with American Gods, the publishers really believed in him, and they gave him such scope for play. I love it. There's no cheats.
No.
It really irritates me when there's cheats in books. Like J.K. Rowling, love her, love the reading. There's cheats. And I don't
explain what you mean by cheats.
A cheat is where something is going along in a certain direction, but to have it continue on that way will take a lot of writing room, pages, and whatnot. So to shorten it and get to the point, to go, it's sort of the equivalent of going A, B, C, D, banana.
Yeah.
Where the banana is the cheat.
So as far as like, we'll just take it as read that this other stuff happened. You get the gist of it, so let's just get there and move on.
The best example probably is in Agatha Christie's later Poirot mysteries, where you could follow through the mystery, and then you get to the end in the denouement, and they'd reveal the killer. However, they would also reveal that earlier in the book, Hercule Poirot had gone and visited a certain specialist on Harley Street and
something
read
you didn't see.
Something that's not there, and it's given as read. And if you're a careful reader, cheats are irritating because you get robbed of
now,
stuff.
That can be done in a way that I wouldn't consider a cheat, where it's just kind of not showing all the cards. Where it's like, you know, for me, for that to be done properly is something like where you think it's going down one path, but then at the end it's revealed that, oh, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it was. And then you look back and you can see all the pieces. It's just you didn't know because you didn't have all the information at the time.
That's slightly different than what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I'm talking about the letter that was written and sealed that you're never told about until till the end of the story. And J.K. Rowling, like they're just little things that are given as read, and it's written off as it's magical. Of course, it's going to happen like that. Only earlier in the book, it's set up so that it can't happen like that, and then you just kind of go, oh. but that's more publisher than writer.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so profoundly satisfying when there's no cheat.
Mm-hmm.
To Kill a Mockingbird, American Gods, the first Anne of Green Gables novel, several others. I'm not usually one for reading literature. The fastest way to get me to not read something is put an Oprah or literature sticker on it. Because seriously, literature usually means boring.
Well, it can
Usually,
be. It depends.
You know,
Well, I find part of the problem with like classic novels is they were written so long ago. The style of writing is very foreign to a modern reader. I mean, nowadays things seem to be written a lot more, I guess, efficiently would be the term. Sometimes almost in shorthand. Like often you won't even have complete sentences. Sometimes it would be just kind of like fragments just to kind of get the point. William Gibson does that a lot. Actually, is he'll it's more almost stream of consciousness of taking you through this event.
Which okay, we're on a tangent here, but
Sorry.
no, it's okay. But with William Gibson,
Yeah.
it is very much the way he writes,
Yeah.
illustrates the
But it
cyberpunk
works.
universe. Yes, it does.
Yeah,
And
like
at some
in
point,
that-
assuming that this goes well, like me. No, I'm joking. No, actually, I'm not joking. We can come back and talk about the difference between William Gibson's cyberpunk universe and then Tad Williams' Otherworld novels and a couple of others, because
That'd be
I
interesting.
think if you get into the Otherworld series, you will see what I mean, where it's
Yeah.
like, because the style is there. Dickens was paid by the word.
Mm-hmm.
So some of his stuff, you know, you were wading through why Aunt Sally wore that particular pair of shoes. But then there was Proust who said, you know, like, just cut it short, say what you mean, and
Get to
leave
the
it
point,
at that.
yeah.
And then Jack Kerouac, who very much everything was stream of consciousness. I don't think the man knew what an eraser was. But what I mean with literature is often it's subject matter. It's gloomy people doing gloomy things in gloomy circumstances.
That's true.
And I admit freely that I have the movie taste of an 11-year-old boy. I liked the Transformers movie. You know, I stand firm in the whole, it was crap, but it was so much fun. I also really like both Independence Days. But I also have, because I do read a lot, my standards for something that if I say that something is really good or really satisfying, it really is. It's the difference between a well done steak and something that's covered with a really good sauce.
Well, I mean, I think everybody has that sort of thing with movies. I mean, there are some that will only watch popcorn movies because that's all they are into. But then, you know, my friends and I tend to like a variety. Like, for example, if you take someone like Skinslip, he loves trashy, just schlocky horror and exploitation films. Just
Hell Comes to Frogtown
just
on the list.
eats them up, and I really enjoy those too. So we often have a lot to talk about. But at the same time, you know, we'll watch some Academy Award-winning masterpiece of cinematic excellence and love that too. It just
The Magnificent Seven.
it really depends on your mood. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can enjoy your Archie comics, you can enjoy your Neil Gaiman. Really depends on what you're into or what you're in the mood for at that particular moment in time.
That's, as I said, you know, I have read Proust. I have read this stuff, and I like Proust.
Yeah.
I just things like Ernest Hemingway and stuff like that. Just the style gets in the way of me enjoying it.
It can, yeah.
But that's a personal thing, which is why this was so satisfying. And then the audiobook, which you have listened to.
I've listened to some of it, yeah. And
you haven't read the book, so I can't really say. But the readers in it.
Just briefly,
Sorry?
for those wondering, the audiobook that we're talking about, it's the 10th anniversary edition, and in this they actually have a full cast. Now, it's not done as an audio drama, it's not abridged or anything like that. It is fully unabridged. The difference is all the characters are portrayed by voice actors, so you actually have distinct voices and distinct performances for each character, which is wonderful.
Have you come to any of the Coming to Americas yet?
Yeah, I've heard the first one, the Bilquist one.
No, that's Somewhere in America.
Oh, no, that's Somewhere in America. Sorry,
Somewhere in
yes.
America is a little bit different.
Yeah,
but Coming to America,
I have not.
I think you stopped just
I
before
think I
one.
stopped. Yeah, I stopped just before the first one. Actually,
That's when they break out.
Yeah.
And Neil Gaiman reads the Coming to Americas.
Speaking of which, we should probably tell people what it's about.
Yeah, good luck with that.
20 minutes into the video. So basically, the general gist of what American Gods is about is, you just remind me with the Coming to America thing, is over the course of history, people have come from different parts of the world, different cultures, different countries to America, and experienced various hardships when they got here, and prayed to or summoned or called upon their gods. So their gods came to America with them, essentially, to help them out. But then over time they were forgotten or lost or couldn't get home. So this is the story of all these ancient gods, some of which you'll know, some of which you may not, and how they're dealing with having been forgotten and trying to be relevant again in a modern world. And that's basically the gist of it right there. Or not. That was a look.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm trying to summarize it very simply, just kind of get
It's not exactly that. It's yes, you everybody in North America is an immigrant. Even the First Nations people come from somewhere, and they bring their gods with them. And the idea of gods to an atheist or an agnostic is people feed gods with their beliefs. So what happens when the old gods aren't worshipped anymore?
Yeah, that's...
And you have new gods. The first new god that you meet, and you meet him fairly early on in the book, not a huge spoiler, is Technology Boy.
Yeah.
And then you will meet other ones like Media. And that's where I'm going to stop, because I am not exactly sure what they've done in the show, because they sort of wobbled things up a little bit. The show went out of order on the books.
I see.
But ultimately, when Mr. Wednesday meets with Chernobog, you get the first flavor of it, and then again in the show, not in the book, where he meets Vulcan, a battle is coming between the old gods and the new gods.
Yes.
Now, the character that we've mentioned, Shadow, he's a man who was in prison. He's about to get out of prison, and then it's the ultimate good news, bad news thing that breaks my heart.
Yeah.
He's being let out of prison a couple of days early because his wife was killed in a car accident. So as he's headed home for her funeral, he meets a man on a plane named Mr. Wednesday. Mr. Wednesday offers him a job.
Yeah.
Shadow is well named because you will find that as he goes, he's not an actor. He's a reactor in everything. And he eventually takes the job as Mr. Wednesday's man. Much better described in the show than it was in the book.
Yeah.
Although the two together just click so nicely. It's like
complement each other.
It's like the last click on the Rubik's Cube. It was just really, really nice how that was done. And then Shadow, it becomes Mr. Wednesday's man. Then we find out who Mr. Wednesday is as he gathers his forces, and then the other forces come along, and you see. Now, I really didn't like what they did in the last episode with Easter. And when you get to the House on the Rock, we can talk about that.
Okay.
Because I don't want to spoil anything for you. But it was the one false note that I'm really hoping that they, not redeem isn't the right word, but they explain. Because I did find as I went through the show, and I kind of went, why did they do that? In the next show, it sort of explained it, and I went, oh, okay, well that's great, that's perfect. So ultimately, the entire book leads up to, like, the overarching, the big bad is the battle between the old gods and the new gods. Yeah. Shadow's journey through that world and through his own life and belief set. In the very beginning, the buffalo god says, believe. And Shadow says, what do I believe? And the buffalo god says, everything. Later on, you'll meet a character named Sam, and she will so brilliantly outline what that means. I actually have Sam's belief speech written down somewhere for myself.
Oh, yeah.
Because and that's not a spoiler. This is something that's all over the place. This was part of it, because and Shadow, it's a relatively short period of time. It's less than a year that this goes from Laura's death to what happens with the battle, and it is ultimately, this is a fight between the old gods and the new gods. Well, how they're holding, and you're right, it's right now at the very beginning of the book, you're seeing how the old gods are trying to hold on. And as you go along, you'll meet Mr. Nancy. I cannot recommend a Nancy Boy's high enough. When we're finished with this, it's a brilliant
We've met
book.
Mr. Nancy in the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait until you meet him in the book.
Yeah.
Orlando Jones was an interesting casting choice, because I always, in my head, I pictured Mr. Nancy as kind of a Jamaican-speaking Red Fox. So when Orlando Jones walked out, I was like,
Interesting.
Okay, let's see what they're going to. But I did the same thing with.
I think he's appeared twice in the show. Once in A Coming to America, which was fantastic. I loved that
Wasn't
one.
that? No,
Yeah,
oh my
that
God,
was great.
And when you read the story and what that was based on was
Yeah.
just eyes. Like
Really?
Oh man, you know something's good when I can actually feel my eyes drying out because I don't want to blink.
Then there was he was telling the story of.
It was the slaves coming, wasn't it?
No, it was when he met up with Wednesday and Shadow later, when they were on their way. I forget which story he was telling. He was telling them a story of somebody else.
When he did this, when he was doing their suits in the show, wasn't he giving the story of Bilquis?
Yes, that's what it was.
And
yeah, it was.
He was actually telling.
So we were actually getting her story because previously we had seen her and what she's doing. I guess in the Somewhere to America, but this was the first time we'd actually got her backstory and who she was and who she used to be.
It's not in the book or the audiobook anywhere.
Really?
Really. And that was
so we never find out her story.
You never find out her story. Sorry, I didn't mean to kick the mic.
Sorry, folks.
And what's interesting, though, is you don't just see Bilquis's story. Mm-hmm. You see a corruption of an old god.
Yes.
And that was the first one. Now, they when you read the book, the story of Bilquis is such a minor thing. At the very beginning, for every man ever, there's a moment with Bilquis. Can't help that.
Yeah.
And then you see what happens to her later on in the story. But the in-between thing where there was nothing, and they brought her back into the show with Mr. Nancy's story, that up until then I'd been kind of unforgiving about some of the changes, but that was where I went, okay.
Well, I'm surprised that we didn't get that story in the book because
that would have hit the cutting room floor.
Yeah, I'm sure it must have been. Well, and the thing is, Neil Gaiman is an executive producer on the show, so I'm sure he says, "Well, hey, I've got all this stuff that didn't make the final book. Why don't we put it in the show?"
Oh, you know what's
that
my huge problem with it. Oh, sorry, I interrupted.
Sorry, no, that's okay. I was just to stay on Bilquis for a moment. That was my impression, like right from the first time we meet her. Was I felt really sad for her because. And even more so when you actually find out her story, because it basically confirmed what I had suspected. Because you see, essentially, we're going to have to talk about it. So the spoilers. So basically, when we first meet her, she's picking up people, not just men, but women, just whoever she can get to be interested in her, bringing them back to her place and kind of fucking them to death, but
no, there's no kind of.
But it's
there's no kind of.
But it's it's very strange. Like she basically she seduces people and literally absorbs them into her being, and they basically feed her soul. And
they agree to that. Worship me
with
your body.
They agree to it.
Worship me.
They just kind of fall under her spell, essentially. They just immediately fall in love with her.
I am going to use that as a euphemism from now on. They fall under her spell.
Well, and that's exactly what it is. Like, they just become completely enraptured by her to the point of the height of ecstasy, and then that's when she absorbs them. But seeing that first scene where she picks up the guy in the bar, in the book, by the way, it's a John. It's just she's basically just prostituting herself to get what she needs, but in this case she's picking, which I think picking guys up is a little better because it means that she's already getting it to where they want to be with her rather than they're just paying her for sex. It makes it a little bit more. Well,
that, and they show the corruption too in the show because she's using a hookup app. I mean, admittedly, even 20 years there was no Tinder, so it's like all of a sudden you've gone, and the first guy, he's like, oh, I've never online dated anybody. That's usually a lie. But and then they go back to it, and she's been, at that point you see the corruption, but you see her being fed by it, and it becomes an addiction. Well,
and that's what the impression that I got was that that I didn't know who Bilquis was, and I don't think we're really supposed to know. Just that, suffice it to say, she's an old god who everybody's forgotten, and this is how she's trying to remain relevant and try to get what she needs as a god that needs to be worshipped. And I thought it was very sad. I felt really bad for her. It's like, wow. I don't know what your backstory is, but I can tell that in your culture you were somebody major. You were somebody really important, big deal, and now this is what you've been reduced to. It made me want to cry. I want to cry right now just talking about it. I just feel so, it's very sad to see that, and I thought that was
It was really, really, in the book, it was just so lightly touched on.
Yeah.
And then what ultimately happens with her, but in the show, so I almost never will tell people all three things, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, the order that I did it in worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
Reading it and then listening to it and then watching it.
Mm-hmm.
However, that's a lot of stories for people who really aren't super fond of the same thing over and over again.
Well,
Possibly not this crowd.
not
you know?
necessarily, because I mean, there's a lot of other franchises that I enjoy in a similar way. Like Doctor Who would be one, for example, where I'll watch the show, I'll read the comics, and then there's the classic series, for example. Every single one of the original story arcs is adapted as a novel. So, like right now, for example, I'm in the process of rewatching the classic series, but also reading the novelization. So, experiencing the same story in two often very different forms, but enjoying them both equally in different ways. So, I can totally relate to what you're saying with American Gods, enjoying the book, enjoying the audiobook, and enjoying the show. You know, seeing this familiar story in all these different forms, different mediums.
In this, because it really is, it's the same story, but it's being expanded upon. I'm really hoping that you listen to the whole audiobook before you watch the rest of it.
Yeah.
You can stop at the House on the Rock.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they get to, and then go back to watch and then listen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very, I am lacking the word, but knowing what's going on in Shadow's head as he's observing things.
Yes.
The actor that they chose to play him is a very talented young man.
In the show?
In the show.
Yeah, okay.
Ricky something?
I don't know his name off the top of my head.
IMDb. It's usually my friend, but I
Yes.
don't have my phone in my hand.
That's okay.
But they just, with the one exception,
Mm-hmm.
they cast it brilliantly.
Oh, Ian McShane as Mr. Wednesday? Come on.
Sorry, Gillian Anderson as Media.
Yeah.
Who recognized her?
I actually did not recognize her.
Okay,
I didn't.
I cheat. I confess I did, but that's
Yeah.
because I'm a huge Lucille Ball
Yeah,
fan.
yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? And then I went, oh my God.
Now the character Media is interesting because every time she appears sort of as a different media icon, like some legend of entertainment that you know.
Oh, and they had so much fun with her.
Yes,
So much fun with her.
And I didn't even realize it was Gillian Anderson. Mind you, bear in mind, I haven't really seen her in anything, so I didn't see the new X-Files miniseries they did. I mostly know her from the original X-Files, so I haven't seen a lot of her other stuff.
You haven't seen The Fall?
I have not seen the new one, no.
No, The Fall. Have you seen The Fall?
The Fall?
Show?
No, I have not. But, so I didn't realize it was her until the final episode when they're at Easter's place and having their little mini confrontation there. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I got that. Oh my God, it's Gillian Anderson. I'm like, yes. But that's okay.
Crispin Glover as Mr. World. I just love Crispin Glover in everything. He's just such an odd, interesting personality, and I always find that he chooses the characters he plays very carefully, I think. And he was so just, what's the word? Engrossing.
He was mesmerizing.
Mesmerizing, that'd be the word, yes.
Well, he was more River's Edge and less Back to the Future.
Yes.
The director on this made some really, really brilliant choices in unleashing the actors. Ian McShane riffing on Mr. Wednesday's speeches.
Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, a hardcore Englishman talking about what it means to be American from the perspective of a Norse god.
Yeah, yes.
It's like, no, we're not balancing on two separate icebergs here.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, because, they're like Ian McShane. I was like, really?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Lovejoy is going to be Mr. Wednesday? Alrighty. Now, I have never seen Lovejoy. To the best of my knowledge, I have never actually seen Ian McShane in anything.
Lovejoy,
I have heard his voices.
Lovejoy is one I've been wanting to check out for ages. Deadwood is another one, where it's the gritty HBO Western.
They're bringing it back. There's going to be more Deadwood, so
That's
I'm
what I
kind
heard,
of getting.
yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Which is good, because apparently it ended very abruptly and
I
unresolved.
got to get through Westworld, too. I just kind of hit the really, really sad thing where it's like every time humans make robots, they either sex them or kill them, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'd like to think better of my species than that.
Westworld is one that does what I was saying earlier, where you think it's going down one path, and then when you realize the path it's actually going, you're just like, what?
Yeah,
And then there's a few moments like that in the series where it just kind of pulls the rug out from under you, but when you look back, you realize, yes,
yeah,
that actually makes sense. Now that I think about it and realize that what I thought I was seeing wasn't what I was seeing, and now that I'm seeing it in my mind's eye the way it actually was in this context, it's just
tangent. Did you see Ex Machina?
yes. A few times. I just loved it.
I have only ever seen it once.
I'm
going to watch it again, and I plan on saving the money because the house that it was filmed in, that's actually a hotel.
Oh, nice.
I'm like, maybe not in the underground rock rooms, hello phobias, but it's such a brilliantly quiet movie.
Yes,
so when I started, watch me bring it back on track.
It really made me a huge fan of what's your face, Oscar Isaac.
Yes.
He was so good as the sort of Richard Branson, business science business tycoon guy.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
I'd seen Ex Machina very soon before seeing Westworld, so it very much colored how I started to watch it. And I'm it's like Keanu Reeves. It's not necessarily the greatest actor, but I love The Matrix.
Yeah.
And I am a geek girl that turned into a geek woman, so
yes.
I read, all this stuff from the dawn of, we're going from point A to point B with robotics and singularity and AI.
Yeah.
And in all of that, while we're talking about really, really good high-class literature here with American Gods, I finally finished the Joe Ledger series. I cannot recommend it highly enough. For real, Mac Bolan meets The Walking Dead meets
Joe Ledger.
Joe Ledger, written by Jonathan Mayberry. The Joe Ledger series, like, for real, it's just for what it is. It's awesome, and it keeps giving me clever little things to say. Which, if this is a family-friendly show, I can't say most of them, but
it rides the line. You should see my rant videos.
But bringing it all back then to American Gods and the show, because the show, oh my gosh. Anybody interested in the history of stuff getting made in Hollywood it needs to take a look at From Get to Go on American Gods. It was picked up by at least 2 different studios and then dropped. Picked up and then dropped. And Neil Gaiman would say, we're finally making this, yay! And then he'd say, we're not making this, boo! And luckily he never stopped or gave up on it. Bless his heart.
Well, and I'm really glad that it got on an independent service like Amazon Prime, because it gives them carte blanche to like in terms of the subject matter, to just not candy coat anything.
Salim, not Salim, and his Ifrit.
Yes,
that was so brave.
Yes. Well, and just generally, like, just the sex and violence and language is very frank and honest. And the depiction of nudity is like, you will see penises in this. And
cellulite.
Cellulite
was kind of a relief.
Full frontal nudity. But it's not gratuitous or anything like that. It's appropriate. And it's just being honest to the scene and the characters or what have you.
There's not a lot of, look, a penis.
No. And it's just, it's appropriate. It's within context. And it's just being honest to the moment or the scene, which I really liked, and I was like really glad to see a show that didn't kind of shy away from stuff like that, and just kind of presented it like this is what happened, and we are just showing it honestly,
Although I have to say, and this is like a personal stylized thing because I'm old and I like animatronics versus CG and some stuff. Can we stop with the CG blood?
The CG blood.
Until they get slightly better at fluid dynamics and shows. It's noticeably distracting, and for just a few seconds takes you out of the show. But that's an across the board. That's not an American Gods thing.
Conversation with one of the principal actors who was in Centurion.
Oh.
Yeah, and she played one of the Picts. She was like one of the main Picts. I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on the name. I'll look it up on IMDb. Her. really super cool person, and was very gracious about answering my questions. And one of the things I commented on was the use of CG blood, and she said, well, in this case, the reason we did that was budgetary.
Yeah,
And I said,
sure
but wouldn't it be cheaper to use real blood? It's like, no, think about it. We have blood splatters all over the place. It gets all over the set. How much harder would it be to reset that for another shot if it was real blood and having to clean the tents and everything? And it's like, that actually makes sense.
And
so they use the CG blood because it means they can then go and do another shot, another take, whatever, and not have to reset everything as meticulously and painfully.
I don't quibble with the economics of it.
And I'm sure that it was a similar reason.
It's one of those things where it's like, oh my gosh, because almost to a time it's straight up physics, fluid dynamics.
Well, I was going to say, I think the other reason is control, because it gives you total control over where it goes and what it does. And let's face it, in terms of the blood splatters and such, there were some pretty meticulous shots in there that I don't think would have been anywhere near as feasibly possible with real blood. Case in point, the scene of Shadow being lynched and his rescue. That is a very elaborate scene. And I honestly don't know how they might have been able to do certain parts of it practical, but I think it was just way easier to manage the complexity of it in CG. And also the fact that we revisit that scene and other aspects need to be added in that sort of give a little more context to what happened there.
That never happened in the book or the audiobook.
No, I noticed that.
And when
I was wow, that was such an epic scene, and it didn't happen in the book.
It didn't happen in the book, and that was one of the things that because something happens later, that made me look at this scene and kind of go, that was a bit gratuitous. They were having fun with it, and then I was like, what the hell? They were having fun with it.
Yeah. Well, I know when you get the callback to that scene later, it has.
I don't know that. This is one of those. I really got to see how that goes. And when you meet Easter in the books, you will see why I had a problem with what they did with Easter in the show. But with this Easter is not something.
Well, I was talking about Laura, actually.
No, yeah. I'm talking Laura.
Yeah. We have some issues with Laura. As a person, as a human being.
Actually, Laura...
As a kick-butt corpse.
She's, dead wife.
Dead wife. Whatever, dead wife.
Yeah. Mad Sweeney. So...
Speaking of casting, love the guy who plays Mad Sweeney. And just love, the apparent expansion of Mad Sweeney.
Yeah. Mad Sweeney made me watch Orange is the New Black.
Oh my God, he's Pornstache.
Yes, he is.
Holy shit! I knew he looked familiar. I did not make that connection. Wow. Mind blown. I need to get caught up on that show. I've only seen the first 2 seasons. But,
I've seen the first episode.
He's a pretty significant character throughout, and hilariously inept at being a douche.
I think it was asked earlier.
He's kind of like Mad Sweeney, actually.
Yeah, right? The question was asked: would you rather be the worst supervillain? And I had to ask worst as in evil or worst as in incompetent. The worst covers a lot of ground. But... Yeah,
we were playing sort of a would you rather game with Rose earlier, and that was one of the questions. And said, well, do you mean? She says, would you want to be the worst? Who would be the worst supervillain? Like me, Nichole, or Rose? And you said worst as in incompetent, or worst as in evil, and then Rose said both. I'm like,
I've read the Overlord list.
Like pure evil and incompetent, so kind of like the motherfucker from Kick Ass.
See, I went right to Austin Powers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Mr. Dr. Evil would be another example.
Yeah.
Yes.
And really Peter Sellers and everything. Because
Inspector Jacques Clouseau.
Yes.
But and I was saying how with Mad Sweeney, you were talking about how he's expanded, and you were talking about how as I was watching, we were chatting online as well. And you were saying how there's certain aspects of him, like he tries to be so tough and like tough as nails, and don't fuck with me and that sort of thing.
Sad.
But yes, he has this sadness.
So sad
Like
eyes.
there's the episode where they're telling the story of Ellie, and that whole backstory, and where he's kind of thinking back to it while he's in the car driving, and he's actually crying, like he's thinking of it and remembering, and he's not a heartless raging Irishman. I mean, he has a heart. He just is hard pressed to show it.
One of the biggest changes between the book and the movie, it wasn't Ellie. Her name was Essie.
Essie
Tregoyan.
Did I get it wrong just now?
No,
or...
they changed it.
Oh, they did change it.
They changed. That was actually why I picked up the book to check, because I was
Okay.
listening to it earlier, but because I was driving. It was just sort of. And the book is available on Amazon, and most used bookstores have several copies. Get the Audible copy.
Get the Audible.
Use
my Amazon link in the description, because I got a kickback for that.
Yes, and if the Audible thing is like, if you don't have an account, use that as your free month thing, because it is really expensive. It's on Playster. Now, I like Playster.
Is the 10th anniversary edition?
Yes.
Yes. Get the 10th anniversary edition.
Get the 10th anniversary edition.
It's the most complete edition, and B, it's just really well done.
Oh, and it's for such a, not sad isn't the right word, but it is not a happy-go-lucky listen.
Yeah.
It's so fun to listen to.
Which one are you talking about?
The 10th anniversary.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's and when I started to watch the show, I almost thought Ian McShane must have listened to the 10th anniversary edition.
I was gonna say,
because
he
very much the similar flavor.
Yes, as I was listening to it, I was like, I had to look up the cast list. I'm like, is that Ian McShane?
It isn't.
It's not.
It's just
it's another. The performance is so similar between the two. Like you'll think the same thing. I'm sure.
And that's exactly.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm trying to say. It was so. I joke that I'm a book evangelist, hence the Joe Ledger serious thing. But Good Omens, American Gods, other things that he's written that I really liked. Like when you finished American Gods, read Anansi's Boys, because
definitely
it's a palate cleanser, because it's fun. I mean, I did cry. I admit it. I cried profoundly. The Graveyard Book, Ocean at the End of the Lane. I haven't read yet. Anybody who's watching this who has read it, hit me up with a review, because I'm a little curious. Fragile Things is just. Anyways.
Sorry, just checking our
I'm just rabbiting on, because it's
okay.
like this is so good. It's like it's like a perfect meal, but every meal needs a dessert.
Neil Gaiman has described his book as just a meandering story. So we're doing a meandering discussion of it.
Well, you know what? If I ever decide to go to the United States for whatever reason, not necessarily anytime soon, I do want to follow some of the paths. I want to find the House on the Rock. I want to find some of these other places. Mind you, I just like roadside attractions anyways.
Absolutely,
I think they're so deliciously weird.
Yeah, and yes, they can be weird and kitschy or strange or awe-inspiring. I mean, it depends.
I mean, Americans started it, but I think Canadians have perfected it, honestly. The world's biggest pierogi.
Remind me to tell you about Chuck the Catfish in Selkirk, Manitoba.
But I think, though, we've run really, really long with this. Do you need to end?
No, it doesn't matter. I don't have a specific time frame. I mean, Saturday Night Insanity is like 2 to 3 hours, sometimes 7 if I'm drunk and building shelves.
I smell a story.
So, no, you just smell a 7-hour video. Which, oddly enough, I think has more views than any others. Like, really? You want to watch me drunkenly build shelves for 7? Okay, fine.
I would watch that movie,
I have another shelving unit over there. I've not built it yet, so let me know.
I'll buy the bottle of Kraken and the Allen wrenches.
Perfect. So, I don't know. I guess any sort of final thoughts? We've kind of touched on a variety of things, whether it be show versus book or just story in general.
I had been waiting for years to see this show. So, and I'm glad to see that it's picking up a new audience and stuff like that.
Yes, and bringing people to the book.
But bringing people to the book, but there's so much more. It's like, from that, I went to Preacher. One
That's
day we'll
another
have
one
to
I need
talk
to
about
check out,
Preacher.
yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, I've been
More
meaning
CG
to.
blood,
Yeah.
which is probably why I noticed it in there, because there's a lot of blood in Preacher.
So I
but
guess
it's fun.
a big question would be, as someone who's been such a long time fan of the book, what do you think of the show? Like, are you finding it to be a satisfying adaptation?
Yes.
Yeah.
The moments where I found myself, just kind of like, oh my God, why? Most of the time, it has come back to, okay, that's why.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm cool with this. Things like expanding out the character of
Mm-hmm.
media. That's been a lot of fun to watch.
Absolutely.
The only real irritant for me, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, was with the character of Easter, and that's because I had somebody and something else entirely in my head. And because they ended with her and what happened on her estate,
Yeah.
and I can't tell you about what happened in the book because it's actually kind of important, and it would be blowing stuff for you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did with the estate, again, I'm finding myself sort of going, I really enjoyed this. I am really recommending it to people. It's just like Stranger Things last summer. This year, it's been American Gods.
Season 2 of Stranger Things this October. Can't wait.
Super excited. So excited. As I would shave my head to cosplay 11. I really would. Of course, I'd end up looking like...
She's our friend and she's crazy.
And still champion.
Yes.
I actually posted that little meme thing on Facebook. That got a lot of likes. People were like, oh yeah, that's her. That is so her. I'm not really crazy. My mother had me
In an
tested.
endearing way.
I prefer the term eccentric, except
Yes.
I'm not wealthy enough. So people have said I can adopt the word eclectic, because by golly, if I can't make
eclectic-
the English language my bitch, you can.
Variety of interest. I would definitely describe myself as having eclectic tastes. Case in point.
Is that your Vanna White moment?
That's
Collection?
yes. Yes.
It's like this was
So-
the showcase you chose. You said screw it to the car. Huh?
So yeah. So anyway, I guess we'll wrap it up. So season 1 of American Gods. Check it out on Amazon Prime. Check out the book.
For real, check out the book. Like, even if you see and like the show and think that it's enough,
There is so
adds
much more.
So much
Yeah.
more. This is like...
Well, as you were saying, like, I mean, one of the big differences I found just generally with books versus show adaptations is getting inside the characters' heads more. You get to more of the thought process. I remember that was one of the things with, we were talking the other day about The Dark Knight Returns. I'm a big fan of the graphic novel of that, and I really enjoyed the movie adaptation. But one thing that, I was sad to see was gone was Batman's thought process in that, because you get a lot of his inner dialogue in the book that you don't get in the movie. You just kind of get the external stuff that's happening. But I totally understood why that was cut out, because you'd have him narrating the whole freaking movie otherwise. Same kind of thing with this, and that's just generally with book to film adaptations. I mean, it's different mediums have different strengths and weaknesses, right? So.
And Neil Gaiman is aside from the fact that he crafts the most amazing stories. I mean, Coraline from start to finish was just a lovely, lovely story. But he's such a brilliant wordsmith.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He
I
is.
love listening even to interviews with him, because even if the person is a complete jackass, he is such a gentleman with them. He will rebuke them, but it's so sweet. It's like he's beating them to death with kittens.
Yes.
And he very much got to exercise that craft in this. Mind you, he has given credit to his editors. Gotta love an author who gives credit to their editors.
Yeah.
Because he's amazing, and he's like, she makes me better.
Yeah.
And like, your wife is a lucky woman because you know how to say.
Yeah.
You make me better.
He's very humble. He's very gracious. He's so polite too. Like, I remember when he was at the book signing, it was a really hot, muggy day, and of course he goes everywhere in his leather jacket. And by the time I got to him, he had taken the jacket off. He's just wearing his wife beater shirt and just dripping sweat. And
you just wife beater shirt. I just said his wife was a lucky woman.
Nice. But every person he talks to, he was equally gracious, equally polite, and just so kind.
And I'm not jealous at all that you got to meet him.
If you want to see that, by the way, I will include a link in the description. I did a video. It was one of my very first videos, one of my earliest videos on YouTube, where I was talking primarily about Sandman, and I included the clip of him, doing the signing and such. And so if you want to check it out, I'll include a link in the description, and you can see me from 10 years ago.
Huzzah!
Little skinnier maybe, but and a little less, a little more up here. But yeah, so check that out. And yeah, so thank you very much for joining us, Nichole.
Thank you for having me on.
Yes. So hope you guys enjoyed my special guest. If you like, I'll have her back sometime. Because she, she visits a lot and has a lot to say about things. She's basically like a girl version of me, basically. So hope you enjoyed as much as I did.
What was the last thing? Okay, the last thing they told me, I was like a girl version of Hulk Hogan. Now that's sexy. And then somebody told me that I was,
brother.
Yeah, I'm like Rick on Rick and Morty. I'm like, that's just what every woman needs to hear.
You're like
I am Rick on Rick and Morty or Grunkle Stan. We need to find a female version of me. I want to be Wonder Woman, but let's face it, she's smoking hot. Not even close.
Well,
no, she really, girl crush all over the place.
Yeah,
like
well, of course.
And once you see it, totally got to do this because she knocked
wanna...
Linda Carter off her throne, and I love Linda Carter.
Really?
Oh yeah,
them's fighting words.
No, that was some going. That was some going. It's like nobody
Alrighty.
will ever beat Adam West as Batman for me. But
I don't know. Michael Keaton will always be my favorite dark Batman, though.
Yes, I'm Batman. But how awesome was he in Homecoming?
What are you? I'm Batman.
Yes,
tell your friends about me.
And that's why we all watched Homecoming.
That's right. Alrighty, well, have yourselves a wonderful day, night, or afternoon, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Big thanks to my Patreon sponsors, and I will see you next time in whatever form that is. Maybe it'll be just me. Maybe I'll have another guest. Who knows? I don't know what I'm doing. You guys just keep watching stuff as I pump it out, so enjoy, and thank you for watching. And I'll see you next time. So until then, sayonara.
Okay, this part gets edited out, right? Because I have something rude to say.
Well, it's definitely not getting edited out now.
No, I was just going to say, it's like you're watching as I pump it out. It's like, I thought you said you deleted your porn blog.
Oh, okay, that's getting edited out.
That was rude. Told you.